2 days. That's how long my marriage lasted before I understood exactly what I had married. I want you to remember that number, 2 days. My name is Alina, and I need to tell you about the moment I stopped being afraid of a man's raised hand, because something inside me finally understood that fear had never protected me. Not once, not ever. Let me take you back to where it started. I was 26 years old when I met Marcus at a mutual friend's dinner party, the kind of gathering where everyone is trying just a little too hard to seem interesting. He wasn't loud. He wasn't the center of attention. He sat at the end of the table, quietly refilling wine glasses, laughing at the right moments, watching me in a way that felt like being seen for the first time in years. I remember thinking, this is what steady feels like. I remember being wrong. We dated for 18 months. Slow, careful, the kind of relationship my mother used to describe as building something real. He never raised his voice. He opened doors. He remembered how I took my coffee and the anniversary of my father's passing and the name of my childhood dog. Little things. The things you're taught to believe mean everything. There were moments, if I'm honest with you now, when something felt off. A flicker of impatience in his jaw when a waiter got our order wrong. The way he'd go quiet, not calm quiet, but tight quiet when I spoke to other men at parties. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself every man has an edge somewhere. I told myself a lot of things. We got married on a Saturday in October. My mother cried during the vows. My best friend Priya squeezed my hand so hard during the ceremony that I still had the mark the next morning. I remember standing at the altar looking at Marcus in his charcoal suit, thinking that I had never in my life felt so certain about anything. Certainty, I would learn, is not the same thing as truth. The wedding night was soft and ordinary, tired, happy, full of half-finished sentences, and too much cake eaten straight from the box in our hotel room. Sunday we spent unwrapping gifts, laughing at the strange things people buy newlyweds, a monogrammed cheese board, a set of matching bathrobes that were 2 sizes too big. Monday, everything was still fine, still soft, still ordinary. Tuesday was the day I learned who I had actually married. It started with something so small I almost can't bring myself to say it out loud, because saying it makes it sound insignificant, and it was not insignificant, not to what came after. I had rearranged the kitchen cabinets. That's it. That's the whole thing. I had moved the mugs to a different shelf, because the old shelf was too high for me to reach without a step stool. And in my mind, in the mind of a woman who had just moved into a new home, this seemed like the most reasonable decision in the world. Marcus came home from work, opened the cabinet to make his evening coffee, and went very, very still. "Why did you move these?" he said. Not a question, a demand dressed up as one. "I just thought it made more sense. I couldn't reach." "I didn't ask you to think." I laughed, actually laughed, because surely he was joking. Surely this was some strange, newlywed humor I hadn't caught on to yet. But his face didn't move. His eyes had gone flat in a way I had never seen before, not once in 18 months, not at the altar, not on our wedding night. "Marcus, it's mugs," I said. "I can put them back if it bothers you that much." "It's not about the mugs." And I remember standing there in our brand new kitchen, still smelling faintly of fresh paint, thinking, then what is it about? Because I genuinely did not know. I had no idea that I had just stepped, for the very first time, into a version of my husband that had been waiting quietly beneath the surface this entire time. Patient, coiled, biding its time, until the ring was on my finger and the guests had gone home, and there was no one left to perform for. He didn't hit me that day. I want to be clear about that. That day, he just stared at me for a long moment, said something cold about how I needed to learn how things work in this house, and walked out to sit in his car in the driveway for 45 minutes. I stood at the window watching him, my arms wrapped around myself, feeling something I couldn't yet name settle into my chest like a stone dropping into still water. I told myself it was stress. New marriage, new house, new pressure at his job. I told myself the version of the story that let me keep sleeping in that bed beside him that night. Wednesday, 2 days after our wedding. I had made dinner pasta, something simple, something I'd made a dozen times before and he'd always complimented. I set the plate in front of him, and he looked down at it like I'd served him something off the street. "This is dry," he said. "I can make something else. I didn't mean." "You never mean to. That's the problem." I felt my face grow hot, that particular heat of humiliation that comes from being criticized for something so small it shouldn't matter, and yet somehow does, somehow lands like a blow you didn't see coming. I said something back. I don't even fully remember what, some small defense, some version of "that's not fair," and I watched his hand tighten around his fork until his knuckles went white. He stood up so fast, his chair scraped hard against the floor. And he raised his hand. I want you to sit with that image for a second. A woman, 2 days married, standing in her own kitchen, watching the man who had promised in front of everyone she loved to cherish her, draw his hand back like she was something that needed to be corrected. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. Something strange happened instead, something I still can't fully explain, even now, even with all the distance and therapy and time between me and that kitchen. I felt time slow down. I felt every cell in my body go completely, perfectly still, the way an animal goes still right before it decides whether to run or fight. And in that stillness, I said 4 words to him. Quiet, steady, words that I did not plan, that came from somewhere deeper than fear. "Do it, I dare you." His hand stopped in the air. And that exact moment, his hand frozen inches from my face, his eyes suddenly uncertain for the first time since I'd known him, that was the moment everything changed. Because what happened next was not what either of us expected. His hand stayed frozen in the air, and for one long second, neither of us breathed. Then, slowly, he lowered it. I watched something shift across his face, not shame, not exactly. Something closer to confusion, like a man who had rehearsed a scene 100 times in his head and suddenly forgot his lines when the other actor refused to play her part. He took a step back. His jaw worked, like he wanted to say something and couldn't find it. "You don't get to talk to me like that," he finally said, but his voice had lost its edge. It came out thinner than he meant it to. I didn't answer him right away. I stood there in my own kitchen, heart slamming against my ribs so hard I was sure he could hear it, and I made a decision that would define the rest of my life. Not a decision made in anger. Not even really a decision made in fear. It was quieter than that. Colder. The kind of clarity that only comes once you've seen something you can never unsee. "Pack a bag," I said. "You're staying at your brother's tonight." "Elena." "I'm not asking." He laughed then, that short, disbelieving laugh people give when reality hasn't caught up to what's happening in front of them. "This is our house. We're married. You don't get to." "I get to do exactly this," I said, and I heard my own voice come out steadier than I felt, steadier than I had any right to feel with my hands still trembling at my sides. "You raised your hand to me, 2 days after our wedding. 2 days, Marcus. I don't need to see you finish that motion to know everything I need to know about the rest of my life with you." He tried, of course. Men like Marcus always try. He softened his voice, told me I was overreacting, told me he would never actually have hit me, that I didn't understand, that his own father had raised his hand plenty of times, and he swore he would never become that. He reached for my arm, and I stepped back so fast I knocked a chair sideways. "Don't," I said, "don't touch me." Something in my voice must have finally reached him, because he stopped. He stood there in the kitchen doorway, this man I had promised my life to 48 hours earlier, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw him clearly. Not the version he performed at dinner parties, not the version who remembered how I took my coffee, just a man who believed, somewhere underneath all that charm, that he was entitled to my fear. He left that night. Not because I made him. I couldn't have, not physically, not really, but because some small remaining piece of self-preservation in him understood that I was not going to back down, and that if he stayed, if he pushed further, there would be no walking back whatever came next. I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of our bed, the sheets still creased from 2 nights of a marriage I now understood I needed to escape, and I called my sister at 11 at night. My voice shook the entire time. I told her everything, the mugs, the dinner, his hand in the air, the 4 words I'd said that I still couldn't fully believe had come out of my own mouth. "Come home," she said, no hesitation, no questions I wasn't ready to answer yet. "Come home tonight." I want to tell you the next part wasn't hard. I want to tell you I packed my bags with steady hands and drove away and never looked back, clean and simple, the way these stories sometimes get told. But that's not the truth, and I promised myself a long time ago that if I ever told this story, I would tell it honestly. The truth is, I stayed in that house for 11 more days. Not because I forgave him. Not even because I believed his apologies, though God knows he gave me enough of them. Flowers delivered to the door. A handwritten letter I still have somewhere in a drawer I haven't opened in years. Promises of counseling, promises of change, promises that came so fast and sounded so rehearsed that I started to wonder how many times he'd used those exact words before, on someone else, in some other kitchen. I stayed because leaving a marriage 2 weeks in felt, in some twisted way, more humiliating than staying in a dangerous one. Because I kept thinking about the wedding, the money my parents had spent, the 300 people who had watched me promise forever to this man. Because some small, wounded part of me kept whispering, maybe if you're better, maybe if you're careful, maybe it won't happen again. That whisper very nearly cost me everything. It was Priya who finally said the thing I needed to hear, sitting across from me at her kitchen table on the 12th day, her hand wrapped tight around mine. "Alina, he raised his hand to you 2 days after your wedding. Do you understand what that means? That wasn't the beginning of something. That was him finally comfortable enough to stop hiding what was always there." I cried for the first time since that night in the kitchen. Really cried. The kind of crying that comes from somewhere old, somewhere that had been holding its breath for 18 months without me even realizing it. I moved out 2 days later. I remember standing in the driveway of that house we'd bought together, boxes stacked in the back of my car, and Marcus standing on the porch, not fighting anymore, not performing anymore, just watching me leave with an expression I couldn't read and didn't care to. "You're really doing this," he said, not a question this time either. "You did this," I said. "The day you raised your hand, I'm just finishing what you started." I filed for annulment 3 weeks later. It felt important, somehow, that the law recognize what I already knew in my bones, that this had never truly been a marriage at all. It had been a performance that ended the moment the audience went home. People ask me sometimes if I regret marrying him, if I wish I'd seen it sooner, if there were signs I should have caught in those 18 months before the wedding. And the honest answer is maybe. Probably. There's a version of this story where I notice the tightness in his jaw at that first dinner party, and I walk away before any of this ever happens. But I've stopped punishing myself for the woman I was before that kitchen. She didn't know what she didn't know. She believed, the way so many of us are taught to believe, that love should be patient with someone else's worst moments, that leaving is a failure and staying is strength. I know better now. Strength was the 4 words I said with his hand still frozen in the air. Strength was walking out of that driveway with boxes in my back seat and no plan beyond the next few days. Strength was learning, at 26, 2 days into a marriage that was supposed to last a lifetime, that the person you're most responsible for protecting is yourself. It's been 3 years now. I'm not going to tell you it was easy to rebuild. It wasn't. There were nights I doubted myself, nights I wondered if I'd overreacted to a single raised hand that never actually landed. But I hold on to something my therapist told me in those early sessions, something I've carried with me ever since. She said, "You don't wait for the hit to land to know what a hand raised in anger means." I didn't wait. And because I didn't wait, I got to walk away with everything still intact. My body, yes, but more than that, my sense of what I deserve, which is something so many women lose long before anyone ever lays a hand on them at all. Marcus remarried 18 months after our annulment. I heard about it through a mutual friend, delivered gently, carefully, like news that might break me. It didn't. I hope, genuinely, that he got the help he claimed he wanted. I hope his new wife never has to stand in a kitchen wondering if 4 words are enough to save her life. But hope isn't the same as trust, and I've learned to let other people's choices belong to them. As for me, I bought a small house of my own 2 years ago. Yellow front door, a garden I'm terrible at maintaining, a kitchen where every single mug sits exactly where I want it, on whatever shelf I choose, answerable to no one. Some nights I still think about that frozen moment, his hand suspended in the air between us, the whole rest of my life balanced on whether I flinched or stood still. I stood still, and I have never, not for a single day since, regretted it. You are a professional AI image prompt engineer specializing in emotional, dramatic story videos, the kind used on YouTube storytelling channels. Task: take the story title I give you below and generate exactly 70 numbered image generation prompts that visually tell that story from beginning to end, in correct chronological emotional order. Set up right arrow rising tension, right arrow twist climax, right arrow emotional resolution. Story title: 2 days after our wedding, my husband tried to hit me. He never expected what happened next. Strict rules you must follow. 1. Structure: divide the 70 prompts into 7 parts of 10 prompts each, following a narrative arc. Part 1, 110. Establish characters, setting, normal life. Part 2, 1120. Introduce tension, conflict, secret. Part 3, 2130. Build up, journey, rising, suspicion or anticipation. Part 4, 3140. First signs something is wrong. Part 5, 4150. The shocking event, twist itself. Part 6, 5160. Consequences, confrontation or crisis handling. Part 7, 6170. Emotional resolution, regret, closure, or hopeful sad ending. 2. Character consistency. Describe each recurring character's appearance, age, build, clothing style, hair, once at the start, then refer back to them the same way in every prompt, e.g., the same woman in her early 30s with shoulder-length hair, wearing a beige cardigan, so the images look consistent across the whole video. 3. Safe content only, no exceptions. No violence, gore, blood, weapons, or graphic injury. No explicit, suggestive, or sexual content. No real-name celebrities, public figures, or copyrighted characters. No offensive, hateful, or discriminatory imagery. No text, logos, or watermarks inside the image. If the title implies something dark, e.g. horror, betrayal, death, reinterpret it as emotional drama, shock, grief, guilt, illness, heartbreak, rather than literal graphic content. 4. Quality boosters. Add these types of details to every single prompt to maximize image quality. Style: cinematic, photorealistic, or hyperrealistic photography, unless a different style is requested. Lighting: specify mood lighting, golden hour, soft window light, dim warm lamp light, blue hour moodiness, hospital fluorescent, candle light, etc. Match the scene's emotion. Camera lens feel, e.g. shot on 50mm lens, shallow depth of field, soft bokeh background, cinematic composition, rule of thirds, detail level. Highly detailed, sharp focus on subject, 8K quality, professional color grading. Emotion: always specify the facial expression, body language of characters, e.g. worried expression, trembling hands, tearful eyes, downcast. Format: end every prompt with 16:9 aspect ratio, no text, no watermark. 5. Format your output like this. Group under headers. Part 1 short label, 110, etc. Number each prompt 1, 2, 3, up to 70. Each prompt should be a single well-written descriptive sentence paragraph, not just keywords, 30-60 words long, containing scene action plus setting plus character description plus emotion plus lighting plus camera quality boosters plus aspect ratio. 6. Do not skip any number. Do not stop early. Deliver all 70 in one complete response, organized clearly under the 7-part headers. Now generate the full set of 70 prompts for the title above.